Watch this video, I will be right back.
White culture, if you could even call it culture, is based in racism. It was a narrative created by colonizers, like my Portuguese ancestors, in order to justify what they were doing to other people on the continent of Africa and even here in North America. And the narrative was that we white people were better than all other races. And they did so through Christianity. They took the Bible and different scripture verses, twisted it around in order to fit the narrative of colonialism, white supremacy, and also the patriarchy. And the patriarchy is white man in power. Supremacy is white man in power. Colonialism is white man in power. And Christianity, for the most part nowadays, is white man in power. There are historical references and proof where the Catholic Church actually said to enslave an African was to save their soul. The kidnapped and enslaved Africans that were here in North America were preached different scripture verses than were actually in the Bible. And that's why they weren't allowed to read. Because if they could read, then they could see that these scripture verses were incorrect and they couldn't be controlled anymore by this white God. And white people, we didn't identify as white until colonialism. We identified as Portuguese, or Latvian, or German, or Italian, or French. But then colonialism came around, and then all of a sudden we became white and we were superior because we were the chosen race by God, and the scripture verses proved it. And we had to go into other people's lands and preach the gospel when really it was all a ruse. It was all an excuse to go in and rape and pillage the land and the people and the cultures. So when I say that white culture is based in racism, it's based in racism. Christianity was the Trojan horse of white supremacy and colonialism. And Western Christianity, as we know today, is still based within superiority. All Christians think that they're better than everybody else. I grew up in it. I'm very familiar with the culture. And it's part of the problem. There's a reason why most of supporters are Christians. It's because they don't even realize that the conditioning of colonialism and Christianity and the patriarchy is so deeply embedded within them and their identity that they don't even see the truth. Christianity is based in superiority, in white superiority, in white culture, which is all based in racism.
Now, the poignant remarks made by this palm color lady in this video sheds light on uncomfortable truths that lie at the heart of Western history and culture. Indeed, it cannot be denied that much of what we understand as palm color culture has been shaped and defined by centuries of articism, colonialism, and the perpetuation of WS. History tells us that European colonizers, including the Portuguese ancestors mentioned, employed narratives of racial superiority and religious justification to justify their exploitation and subjugation of indigenous peoples, particularly in Africa and the Americas. The notion of WS, bolstered by distorted interpretations of Christianity, served as a convenient ideological tool to justify the brutal conquest, enslaved, and cultural erasure of indigenous and African people. Moreover, the intertwining of patriarchy with systems of WS further perpetuated structures of power and privilege that continue to shape our societies today. Patriarchy, as the palm color lady aptly describes, it's not only about gender dynamics, but also about the consolidation of power and authority in the hands of palm color men, often at the expense of marginalized communities, including women, people of color, Black people, and indigenous people. By acknowledging the historical roots of articism, colonialism, and patriarchy in shaping palm color culture, I feel people can begin to confront the uncomfortable truths of our collective past and work towards a more equitable and inclusive future. The history of European colonialism is marked by exploitation, violence, and the subjugation of indigenous people across the globe. Colonizers, driven by a desire for wealth, power, and resources, impose their will upon native populations, often through force and coercion. The legacy of colonialism continues to reverberate in contemporary society, shaping patterns of inequality, inequality, economic disparity, and cultural marginalization. European colonizers frequently evoked religious justifications, particularly Christianity, to legitimize their conquest and domination. Missionaries accompanied colonial expeditions, spreading the gospel and enforcing religious conversion among indigenous peoples. The Christian doctrine of manifest destiny, which asserted the divine right of Europeans to conquer and civilize inferior races, further reinforced notions of WS and cultural superiority. The palm color lady's assertion that colonizers twisted scripture and religious teachings to justify their actions is supported by historical evidence. Biblical passages were selectively interpreted and manipulated to support narratives of conquest, domination, and racial hierarchy. For example, the myth of the case of Ham was used to justify the enslavement of Africans, while passages promoting love, compassion, and equality were conveniently ignored or overlooked. Patriarchy, as the palm color lady articulates, it linked to systems of WS and colonial domination. The consolidation of power and authority in the hands of palm color men perpetuated systems of oppression that marginalized women, black people and people of color, and indigenous communities. The patriarchal structures of colonial societies reinforced gender norms and hierarchies that upheld the dominance of palm color men, often at the expense of marginalized communities. We have finally come to the end of the video. What do you have to say? Share your thoughts as well in the comment section. Thank you for watching and see you in my next video.